Attention chiropractors, slayers of subluxation, unleashers of the imprisoned impulse. I am Dr. Anthony Pellegrino from ChiroEdge, and welcome to this week's episode of the Chiropractic Research Breakdown, where each week we break down the most relevant chiropractic science and philosophy to empower you with the ammo and certainty necessary to change your community from the inside out. All right, subluxation slayers, I was scrolling through PubMed earlier today. Today's Sunday, November 8th. So maybe this week, maybe last week, depending on when you're listening to this. And as I'm going through, reviewing articles, looking for things that are chiropractic related, as one does, I came across this article that's called Enduring Neuroimmunological Consequences of Developmental Experiences from Vulnerability to Resilience. It was published in the Journal of Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience, and research was done at the Neuroscience and Mental Health Research Institute in Cardiff of the United Kingdom. And what really caught my eye, I forgot the exact word that I had searched when I did this. I think it came up when I was searching for articles related to the vagus nerve. That makes sense. And as I was scrolling through and reading, this is the quote that really stood out to me. Negative experiences from infection to psychological stress at a range of different time points in utero to adolescence can permanently alter the function of the neuroimmune system. Given its prominent role in normal brain development and function, this dysregulation may increase vulnerability to psychiatric illness. So this stood out to me. If you guys aren't excited yet, I hope you are soon. This stood out to me for a number of reasons. Number one, whenever I see any system like digestive or immune or reproductive with the word neuro in front, I get really excited. Another reason I got excited is because of our current climate and how chiropractors don't want to talk about the immune system or don't want us to talk about the immune system, and even go so far as to say that the immune system is separate from the nervous system, which makes no sense. The other is that psychological stress at different time points, including in utero, can permanently alter the function of the immune system, permanently alter. Okay, birth trauma, prenatal stress, all of the different things that chiropractors work with. And then from that point, this dysregulation in the immune system affects normal brain development and function and can lead to psychiatric illness. I looked, and none of the people who wrote this article were chiropractors, but they very well could have been. The communication here is everything that when we look at adapting to the 3 T's, when we look at improving nervous system resilience and adaptability, that is what this article is about. So we're going to jump in and review the immune system today. The article did a fabulous review of normal function of the immune system and how immunological changes can impact brain development, and how stress, physically, chemically, and emotionally, chiropractically, can impact the development of the immune system and therefore impact the overall development of the neurological development. So we're going to go through and do this review slightly differently than we usually do. It's not a chiropractic article per se, and we're going to go through different things that I want you to be using in your table talk and different research components that are really exciting as well. But I just think that this is going to be a little bit more of a teaching episode, because we're going to be going through and pulling out the words from the article that they use when they review normal development of the immune system. And I'm going to be talking about things like interferon, interleukin, all of the different things that I think that we in chiropractors should understand. So I am going to use some of those Latin words and different things like that just kind of go with medicine. So anyway, just most of what I'm going to be doing on this article is pulling out specific quotes for you to learn from. So right in the beginning of this article, what we start talking about is that environment can have a profound impact on brain development, conferring risk or resilience to psychiatric illness. Several meta-analyses show an increase in the risk of developing neuropsychiatric disorders in adulthood for individuals who are exposed to stress. However, not all people who are exposed to stress develop illness. Some people demonstrate resilience due to either A, their genetics, or B, positive environmental influences. In the influences, they list things like high family functioning, close parental monitoring, and good social support. You and I know that the improved adaptability of the nervous system via what will kind of go back to Sue Brown BGI land. If you guys have never read the article, The Role of Subluxation in the Human Evolution, I like to sometimes, especially when we talk about neurological development, think of the adjustment subluxation process, and that the goal neurologically, neurodevelopmentally, the subluxation adjustment cycle isn't just so to keep somebody free from subluxation and put them in a bubble to do that, but it's to get their body, actually the way that they improve is by getting subluxated and then getting that corrected. And I just boiled down a really heavy philosophical piece to 30 seconds. So I'm sorry if you guys are big BGI people and I kind of butchered that, but that's the cycle that I'm mentioning. An individual who goes through that, gets subluxated through living their life, and then gets that corrected is obviously going to increase adaptability and is going to increase resilience, right? That's what chiropractic is all about. So the authors in here note that human studies are typically hard to do on development because of environmental factors, but animal studies are easy to do because we can negate those factors. What they found is that stress during development in animal studies is detrimental for cognition, is detrimental for behavior, is detrimental for neurogenesis, and they use the word is detrimental for neuroplasticity. So the underlying mechanisms of how stress impacts psychiatric illness, in utero stress impacts psychiatric illness later on, and impacts the function of the immune system isn't fully understood. But research reveals that the neuroimmune system plays a role. There is overwhelming evidence that both the innate and adaptive immune systems play a key role in normal brain development and function. Contrary to the traditional view of the brain being immune privileged, we now know that there are considerable levels of immunological communication between the periphery and the central nervous system. This is crucial for what they call sickness behavior. That activation of the immune system affects neuronal function and causes reduced activity, social interaction, and sexual activity while increasing responsiveness to pain, anorexia, and depressed mood. Okay? When we talk about when you feel symptoms, you're not sick. In chiropractic, we have the term expressing health. And in this article, they talk about how all of these neurological effects of, quote, being sick, sickness behavior, the reduced activity, the reduced social interaction, reduced sexual drive, making you more responsive to things like pain and anorexia, making you depressed, all of the things that we in society want to treat. These neuroscientists essentially say that these behaviors actually benefit the infected individual by forcing them to reduce and minimize their energy expenditure, limits their exposure to predators, thinking evolutionarily, and allow for successful recovery from infection. So in chiropractic all the time, we talk about how, the fever, if we raise our temperature of our body, then, it makes it harder for bacteria and viruses to live. And, we don't want to go in there and take a Tylenol or an ibuprofen and just reduce this fever because we're destroying the body's natural, normal immune response. And they go so far as to say that not only the fever itself, but all of those, not just the cough, not the runny nose and those physical things, but even the emotional response, the neurological response to being sick is actually all part of the body's normal, natural, innate immune response. This is beautiful. This isn't some crunchy journal. This is in molecular and cellular neuroscience. I mean, it's just simple physiology. right? So this sickness behavior is caused by the generation of pro-inflammatory cytokines. If you're going back to Board's days, this is going to be your interleukin-1 beta, your tumor necrosis factor, your TNF alpha, your interleukin 6. And there's two pathways for how these pro-inflammatory cytokines affect the central nervous system. The fast pathway is going to be through primary afferent nerves that are surrounding the specific inflammation points in the body. The inflammation points in that area affect the afferent nerves by triggering action potentials that are related to the central nervous system. Slowly, there's a diffusion, and this is massive, right? There's a diffusion of cytokines into the brain through the circumventricular organs, the endothelial cells of the blood-brain barrier, and the choroid plexus. So there's several mechanisms here that they review, and we're just going to be really easy with it. There are certain cytokines and chemokines that cross the blood-brain barrier and cause a cascade of effects. The lymphatic drainage system of the brain functions to clear waste from the central nervous system, transport lipids, maintain interstitial fluid, water, and ion homeostasis, regulates cerebrospinal fluid and interstitial fluid pressure, and provides links as well between the peripheral immune system and the central nervous system. This signaling works bidirectionally. The central nervous system derived antigens in the cerebrospinal fluid drain down to cervical lymph nodes. And when they drain into the cervical lymph nodes, it activates the peripheral immune system, which therefore drives recruitment of immune cells to the CNS. The gut flora also link the peripheral immune system to the central nervous system via our favorite, the vagus nerve. The central nervous system also has entirely its own immune system, which consists of microglia, which are the macrophages of the CNS. Fascinatingly, the macrophages in the brain consist about 10 to 15% of the total number of brain cells. And of the immune cells that are located in the body, macrophages are about 80%. This is massive, right? Because when we're talking about permanent change, once the blood-brain barrier in the body is fully matured, the microglia are typically confined to the brain under healthy conditions, right? Long-term chronic inflammation is going to degrade that blood-brain barrier beyond the normal passing of immune cells that go through there, right? So it's going to be typically confined to the brain and will self-renew throughout an individual's life. However, the population of cells is relatively permanent and experiences very little turnover. So any events that affect the microglia during development, right? Because those same macrophages will last a lifetime, right? Because there's very little turnover, that any events that affect the microglial development could potentially have long-term consequences for these functions. So we used to view macrophages, if you were to think about it, as just being in a constantly resting state. They were dormant and didn't do anything until an invader came. However, the authors state that it's more accurate to think of these macrophages as being in a constant scanning and surveying state. So even when they aren't fighting, they're going to be active in neurotransmission. They're going to take part in regulating the homeostasis of the central nervous system and regulate neurogenesis during development and adulthood, right? So it's literally the immune system regulates brain development and neurogenesis, right? So under inflammatory conditions, because we just said that that's what happens when they're in a rest, not a resting state, but a scanning and surveying state. But when inflammatory conditions are present, the microglia will be activated by the pathogen. They call them pathogen-associated molecular patterns and damage-associated molecular patterns, and will unleash a cascade of inflammatory events. This is going to include the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines. It's going to include the clearance of cellular debris. It's going to cause a presentation of antigens to activate additional microglia. And then once the threat is resolved, anti-inflammatory cytokines push the microglia back into their dormant surveying homeostatic state. So this is a quote directly from the article. Throughout pre- and postnatal development, microglia are highly active, shaping and fine-tuning neural circuits throughout the central nervous system via synaptic formation and pruning through activation of the classical complement cascade. This induces induction of apoptosis, myelination, and regulating developmental neurogenesis. Depleting microglia during development results in working memory deficits and altered anxiety, whereas a loss of these same in the same manner during adulthood will have little effect on behavior. So when we talk about, and you say things like sick kids grow up to be sick adults and healthy kids grow up to be healthy adults, this is a paper from the Neuroscience and Mental Health Research Institute in Cardiff that says, no, but seriously, a healthy immune system in a child is going to affect the immune system for the rest of their life. And not only that, but their mental health for the rest of their life. Whereas in adulthood, things are already set. So besides those macrophages, we also have astrocytes, which play a unique role in the maintenance of the blood-brain barrier and are therefore able to control the bidirectional flow of immune cells between the central nervous system and the periphery. Their response to inflammation directly influences the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. So those are massive. We've got mast cells. Now, these communicate with neurons and glia through the secretion of, like what we're talking about, the cytokines and expression of neurotransmitter receptors. And therefore, these immune cells in the brain can influence behavior because of the whole cytokine and the inflammation and how the macrophage, the CNS macrophages, the microglia respond to that we just discussed, right? So then they go into and talk about the neuroimmune system. And again, they use that word neuroimmune, which is just freaking beautiful. So they go in and talk about how the neuroimmune system relates to psychiatric illness. Given the vital importance of various immune components for normal brain development, neuronal function, and behavior, it is easy to imagine how altering the neuroimmune system could affect cognitive function. I agree, Dr. Redaway and Dr. Bridges. They say correlations between the immune system and the psychiatric illness have been known for over a century. In 1927, Julius Wagner-Jauregg was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine for the development of a malaria inoculation to treat syphilitic psychosis. In the last few decades, alteration in immune function has been associated with a range of psychiatric illnesses. Mastocytosis, or the excessive accumulation of mast cells in internal organs and skin, is associated with anxiety, emotionality, and memory alterations. Studies have shown that altered levels of peripheral cytokines and lymphocytes shows up in schizophrenia, in bipolar disorder, in PTSD, and in major depression. Interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-2, interleukin-6, interleukin-8, and TNF-alpha are all associated with suicide. So, and I quote, given the intimate functional relationship between the immune system and the neuronal system, aberrant neuroimmune function directly contributes to the etiology of psychiatric disorders. I mean, we are just totally in chiropractic land here. And yet there's people in a profession who want to say that chiropractic, that the nervous system has nothing to do with immune system function. And to them, I say, open up your darn eyes and search Vegas on PubMed, right? Like, you're being willfully ignorant. Willfully ignorant. Okay? I know that you're intelligent, smart people. Stop being an ignoramus. Okay? So psychosocial stress in the immune system. And this is massive because now what they're going to start to talk about is the 3 T's and how psychosocial stress actually impacts long-term development of the immune system and therefore long-term psychiatric and cognitive development. They say the immune system is obviously highly responsive to immunological stimuli, right? Obviously, the immune system is going to be sensitive to invaders because that's what it does. However, they say, it also responds to non-disease related stimuli, especially stress. They say that acute stressors, such as public speaking to skydiving, promote immune function in the periphery, that they can do a blood test and see an increase in pro-inflammatory mediators right before somebody goes to go public speak. They say stress is a normal part of everyday life, and that this response of the pro-inflammatory mediators, again, is not something to be treated, but actually is there to give us an evolutionary advantage by prime the immune system. This is something a way I haven't thought about this, but if you go escape the tiger, your body will actually prime the immune system because there's a chance that you're going to get injured when you are in fight or flight and running or facing this predator. If you are injured, that means that you have an increased risk of infection. So your body will actually activate the inflammatory responses in your body with acute stress in a way that evolutionary gave us an advantage. Again, this is all thinking about acute stress, and we're going to talk about that. They talk about how the sympathetic adrenal medullary and hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis are the major stress axis of the body. If you guys are looking back to like boards days, that's the SAM axis, the sympathetic adrenal medullary, and the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The sympathetic, the SAM axis, produces a rapid response. This involves the paraventricular nucleus, the locus coeruleus, the rostral ventrolateral medulla, and the subsequent secretion of epinephrine and neuroepinephrine from the adrenal medulla and neuroepinephrine from the sympathetic nerves. The HPA axis, which is one of the things that I love to talk about because how it's heavily influenced by the limbic system and the amygdala, which they talk about as well, which are things that when we look at the disafferentation model of subluxation, it's really easy to trace and see how aberrant, altered proprioceptive information from the upper cervical spine especially can definitely impact the cerebellum. It can definitely impact the amygdala. It can definitely impact the HPA axis, the hippocampus, everything like that. So whenever I see HPA axis, I get really excited. But they say that the HPA axis is slower with secretions from the hypothalamus, again, pituitary and adrenal glands, especially neuroepinephrine. The limbic system also plays a huge role in regulating stress response, as we just talked about. They say there's many pathways through which the immune systems and the stress systems communicate. For one, glucocorticoids bind to receptors in immune cells in the periphery and brain and produce either a pro or inflammatory effect depending on the dose of stress, the duration of stress, and the regions of the body and brain that are affected. The cytokines, which we've talked a ton about, stimulate the HPA axis as well. Sympathetic pathways descend from the brain to the bone marrow, to the thymus, to the spleen, to the lymph tissues, and release hormones that bind to immune cells. Those same hormones, specifically what they're referencing as norepinephrine, will activate the vagus nerve, which will transmit that information up to the brain and increase hormone production in the brain, which then goes to regulate synaptic and structural plasticity. The vagus nerve is also stimulated by peripheral cytokines, providing another communication pathway. So in that, there's a couple things that I want to go back to and break down, is that these authors talk about how neuroplasticity in the brain is altered from improper or from an activated vagus nerve. An activated or a deactivated vagus nerve is going to influence plasticity in the brain. So if you took out the whole immune system conversation and just talk about how things like heart rate variability is a huge indicator of vagal tone, how chiropractic influences the vagus nerve, right, but through correction of vertebral subluxation. If you look at all of those things, it's an easy deduction to say that chiropractic care is going to influence neuroplasticity via the vagus nerve. I mean, that's just easy. They go on to say that the intimate links between stress and immune systems mean that exposure to chronic or intense stress may negatively dysregulate both stress and immune functions. And here we go, if you guys are excited yet. Given the role the immune system plays in normal behavior and neuronal function, dysregulation of the immune system by severe, acute, or chronic stress may play a direct role in pathological states. However, most studies look at immune changes shortly after stress exposure in adulthood. What we're talking about, you can do a blood test and look at the cytokines following skydiving, right? And you can see that. However, studies show that when we focus on the stress during development, it demonstrates that these effects can be long-lasting and result in permanent reprogramming of the developing neuroimmune system. Conversely, positive experiences may program resilience and even mitigate the negative effects of stress. I hope that going through this so far has really begun to help you see the massive role that we have every time that we adjust a child, in programming that resilience, in increasing that adaptability of the nervous system, in getting their body to better adapt to the 3 T's, traumas, toxins, and thoughts, specifically thoughts we're referencing here, that are undeniable and are a normal part of life. And also creating the environment that helps parents see that the normal function and normal response of their child, especially during times of, quote, sickness, unquote, the allowing the body to go through those states will have positive changes for a lifetime. Now they go into those developmental stresses. Now, developmental stress can be experienced in utero in the early or late postnatal periods and go all the way through adolescence. So in utero, they say that positive stresses are diet. Okay, so I'm assuming a negative stress would be diet as well. They say that a negative stress is maternal immune activation, autoimmune disease, psychosocial stress, and mental illness. During childhood and adolescence, a positive stress would be secure caregiving, high family functioning, good social support, cognitive behavioral therapy, exercise and diet. Negative stress is going to be abuse, parental illness, death, abandonment, crime, divorce, war, natural disaster, displacement. In adulthood, positive stresses are exercises, mindfulness, stress reduction, relaxation techniques, brief interventions to improve positivity, and diet. And negative stresses are acute laboratory stress, caregiving stress, work stress, unemployment, poverty, death of a loved one, marital problems, and serious illness. So they just go ahead and show that all of the different times when it is crucial for chiropractic to come in and help the body better be able to adapt to stress. Prenatally, understanding that when we're checking that mom, right, it's not just about when we're checking that mom, we're looking at the function of her nervous system. It's not just about the Webster. It's not just about the structural change we make in that pelvis. When we influence mom's nervous system, we influence baby's nervous system. When we influence baby's nervous system, we influence the entirety of their life. We increase just by simply checking mom. We are going to improve the function of their immune system for a lifetime. Okay, for a lifetime. When you adjust that mom, you're influencing the immune system and the nervous system of that baby for a lifetime, right? When following birth, you correct the aberrant proprioceptive information in the upper neck from birth trauma. Not only is that going to help them turn their head from side to side, not only is that going to help with the reflux, not only is that going to help with the colic, not only is that going to work with the things that the parents originally heard that chiropractic can, quote, help, unquote, but remember that when you are when you are increasing the adaptability and resilience of the nervous system, you are impacting them for a lifetime during the most crucial developmental phase. Right? Remember that with every adjustment that you give, yes, that kid's going to sleep better that night. Yes, that kid's going to have a blowout and probably poop all over your table. That's the reason you have sinks everywhere. But you are influencing the function of their body for a lifetime. When that baby can't eat, sleep, and poop, right? You're helping that and you're influencing them for a lifetime. You know, and you can communicate that anything that alters anything that causes aberrant immune system function in a child and is going to impact their mental health and it's going to impact their future immune system for a lifetime. And that can be in the role of vaccinations, although they don't specifically talk about that in that article, but all signs point to the fact that anything that alters normal immune function in a child is going to influence them for a lifetime. They just obviously just don't say that, but all of the writing is on the wall there. That's from the fact that if you look at JAMA Pediatrics, the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics has said that antibiotics and reflux medications, worst case, should not be given in the first year of life. Worst case scenario, because these things result in developmental disorders and challenges later in life. When you help to look at a parent in the face and help educate them on that we want to allow their child's body to function as it should, and chiropractic is there to support that. And when we change them from a reactive to a proactive healthcare model with chiropractic at the forefront of that, we are making massive changes in not only their current health, not only that, but in their mental health for a lifetime, right? Adapting to the 3 T's is massive, okay? It's massive. The umbilical cord doesn't just bring blood. It is a power cord, right? It is mom's nervous system and baby's nervous system, and therefore their immune systems are connected, and we work with that all the time. To some, chronic or intense acute stress results in abnormal neuroimmunological phenotype, which may result in abnormal brain structure and function, predisposing individuals to psychiatric illness. A positive experience may promote resilience and can reverse the effects of developmental stress on the neuroimmune system. The authors sum that greater emphasis needs to be placed on protective and restorative role that exposure to positive environmental experiences may provide. So let me ask you guys a question. Are you going to look that parent in the face and speak with a boldness where they trust you and allow you to be that positive environmental experience? Are you going to walk with boldness this week while you correct subluxation? Are you going to keep the big idea with you with every adjustment, even though if you guys use Platinum, you know what a Z list is. Even though you have a waiting room full of full Z list, right? Are you going to keep that intent with you with every adjustment that you give and just know the sheer gravity of what you are doing? Are you going to be the one person in that pregnant mom's life, the one provider that helps her take the wheel of her own pregnancy and doesn't scare her with every ultrasound, doesn't tell her that her baby's too big or too small and that something's wrong with her? Are you going to help her promote positivity in her own health during pregnancy, right? Are you going to help her achieve the birth that she wants and be that positive fact? Because every positivity that you bring in, every way that you help her is going to not only influence her, but going to influence a lifetime for that baby, right? As you improve that breastfeeding, right? As you improve the ability of baby to latch by correcting subluxation, are you going to keep in mind that that's not just going to help them feel better now, but it's going to literally impact the entirety of that child's life? As you help that mother feel comfortable going to her doctor and saying, I think I want to do a VBAC because I've been making all the positive necessary decisions, are you going to think about the gravity of that statement? Because a C-section is going to drastically alter the development of the immune system of that child. Keep all of that with you with every adjustment. And I hope that you keep that gravity with every atlas that you set. I sure know that I am. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. A little bit different things we've done in the past. Go out there and slay some subluxations this weekend. And I love you all.